My therapist said, grief isn't something you cure. It's something you carry, but better. You can't amputate love, Dr. Han, she told me. You learn how to walk with the limp. I remember staring at her bookshelf, rows of self-help books that all sounded the same. What's the hardest part about moving on? She asked me. I thought about it for a while. Then I said, doing things from duo to solo? She nodded gently. That's honest. Now, help me see, where do you stand at this junction? I let out a breath and stared at the floor. Like, I'm borrowing someone else's husband for Mondays and Wednesdays, then giving him back to his wife and baby girl on Tuesday and Friday? Then tell me, what does your heart tell you now? I sighed. To stay on, it feels so unfair to me, like I'm being punished for wanting him. But we were in love first, before his parents forced us apart and mandated him to marry into alliance. I swallowed hard. Now, staying like this, I feel like I'm the one who should apologize for existing between them. But if I walk away, I don't know if I'll ever find another Kang Jiwoo. He who loves me didn't flinch, who made me forget that a love like ours was possible. Then she started talking about coping mechanisms, about moving toward acceptance. I was supposed to list the usual things: journaling, mindfulness, grief. Instead, I wrote one sentence on my notepad. I still love him. After a while, she said, love can transform. That healing itself is a form of redefining the relationship without needing the person to stay. And that was when the idea came to me. Not instantly, but like a quiet seed planted behind my ribcage. To preserve love in a form that wouldn't hurt anymore. To love without needing him beside me. To keep a piece of him without keeping him. Welcome to Mending Hearts. Slip on your headphones and follow the footsteps of a man who tried to heal his depression by redirecting his love into building an alternate reality that could preserve his attachment. Though bookmarked. This is not encouraged. Chapter 1. That night, I told Kang Jiwoo my application to serve at Frontier Base K had been approved. I'd be leaving the next day. Yup, cut the hurt fast. No room for procrastination. Regret is a bitch. Of course, the man I'd loved for 5 years in the open and 1 year in the shadows couldn't accept the breakup rationally. Yirim, stay. Please. Our arrangement works just fine. I can't. I don't want to lose you. Arrangement? I almost laughed at the word. It works for you, I said quietly. Not for me. Every time I see you smiling, holding your daughter, I die a little inside. Staying here, I'm slowly rotting under the skin. His silence was louder than any protest. Of course he couldn't argue with that. No one needed to tell him the kind of injustice he was doing to me. Lucky for him, I am a man. If I'd been a woman, the fallout would have been unthinkable. Kang Jiwoo just stood there, eyes red, chest rising and falling too fast for a general. And I, pathetic, desperate, and shameless, asked for one last night. Just tonight, I whispered. Let me have you once more before I go. We collided, raw, vivid, and unapologetic. I clung to him so tight, I could press him into my bones. So when the body forgets, my soul would still remember. He answered back, matching my fervor with equal ferocity, like he was punishing me for daring to leave him, like he couldn't stop holding on. The bed frame nearly broke apart. When the clock passed 2 a.m., I woke. The room looked like a tornado had passed through. I smiled, feeling smug and totally satisfied. But the air smelled of sweat and something bitter, like an ending. I dressed quietly, picked up every used condom from the floor like someone erasing evidence of a crime. Then I looked at him one last time, sleeping, jaw unclenched for once, face softened by exhaustion. I left before the clock struck 3. No note, no message, no trace. Then I disappeared from Kang Jiwoo's life. For good. Chapter 2. I am Han Yirim. At 29, I'd somehow become the youngest VP of internal medicine at K Frontier Military Hospital. A title that sounded far more impressive than the reality of patching up frostbitten soldiers, treating pneumonia, and balancing endless paperwork in a small city of barely 50,000 people. 5 years ago, I thought heartbreak would destroy me. By the hands of the one and only man who accepted my truth, after I finally came out, and stopped apologizing for who I truly am. The one man whose big dick stood hard every time we met, So much so if this were an alpha and omega world, our pheromone compatibility would have hit the roof. But what good was any of that? In the end, he did what straight men always do, married a woman, because that was what the standard world deemed right. Yet I came out unscathed. Or well, maybe just scarred differently, because I carried truths I never said out loud, because at the final moment, when I was cutting off depression that was spiraling me down, driven by impulse, my abandonment trauma responded the only way it knew how. That was by finding a way to keep a piece of Jiwoo alive with me. Ethically, I knew I had crossed the line. But when my OBGYN colleague retrieved the pieces of Jiwoo from the kind surrogate mother's wombs, placed the two pink, pissed-off-faced miracles into my trembling arms, my entire world felt whole again. I named them Yuna and Yuri, for grace and clarity, my two precious little whirlwinds. No matter how hollow my heart felt before, no matter how broken or exhausted I became, the moment I looked upon their faces, my pain dissolved like dawn breaking after rain. They showed me that every day was worth living for. And to top my cake with the best cherry, my little whirlwinds somehow turned out exactly the way I'd hoped, mirroring all the attractiveness of the man I had once loved deeply. Yuna, my daughter, had his sharp gaze, the kind pierce right through you and make you feel small. Yuri, my son, had his smile and that same stubborn chin. Yuna, always the ringleader, always bossing her brother with authority. And Yuri, my younger, would trail behind, quietly serious, clutching his toy stethoscope like a medal of honor. They didn't play house or doctor. They played medic on mission. On a mission I didn't know, only until much later. Under my watchful eyes, the adults working in the pediatric wing became her subordinates. Her leadership style? 50% confidence, 20% imagination, and 30% bribery via snacks. Yuri, meanwhile, was the field medic, crawling under tables to rescue plush Captain Woody and Buzz Lightyear, whispering in his baby voice, "Hold still, sir, I'll fix you." I was their first and permanent Private Ryan. They bandaged my wrist with toilet paper as gauze. Their favorite diagnosis came with a soldier's salute. "You'll live, Dada." And as much as they meant the whole universe to me, they were also my biggest classified operation, because their father had no idea they existed. Kang Jiwoo, the man I had loved since my final year of medical school. He joined the military right after graduation, while I chased the endless corridors of medicine. Today, he was a 2-star Major General serving in the Republic Armed Forces, known infamously as the eyes that could freeze 100 men. Chapter 3. The urgent call came close to midnight. A helicopter thundered down onto the hospital helipad. The patient was classified as top general. Male. 31. Critical condition. Because of his rank, the entire team snapped into formation in record time. And me, living just 2 blocks away in the government quarters. VP no less, completely out of fucking excuses to stay buried under my comfy comforter. I hadn't even had time to change out of my home clothes when I reached the operating floor. The fluorescent lights hummed, charts passed between hands, machines beeped in anxious rhythm. And then, I saw the name on the chart. Kang Jiwoo. My throat closed. For 5 years, that name had existed only in my bloodstream, dormant like a fever that never broke. And now, under harsh surgical lights, 5 years of silence collapsing into a single heartbeat. Injury report. Close quarters combat. Estimated 4 assailants. Weapon, military knife. Multiple lacerations to upper torso, left forearm, and right palm. 1 stab wound to the quadriceps, deep, nearly severing the femoral artery. Pulled out just in time. Any deeper, he would have bled out before the medevac arrived. The hot-blooded commander who once seemed untouchable now lay on my table, pale as parchment, chest rising only because the machine told it to. Operation took 2 hours. Lacerations sutured, hemorrhage controlled, thigh wound debrided and irrigated. Muscle fibers reapproximated, fascia closed. By the time the OR lights dimmed and the bed rolled out, the once unshakable Major General Kong looked like a breathing sarcophagus, one apocalypse short of unrecognizable. Of course, a 2-star commander could survive it, but surviving wasn't the same as enduring. The moment consciousness returned, he unraveled. Fury spilling over, monitors crashing, refusing any visitor with the precision of a general at war with the world. Least of all, his wife. Rumors traveled across the wards faster than 4 drips could run. The close combat, it turned out, wasn't entirely about the mission gone wrong. Insiders hinted it was personal, laced juicily with infidelity, betrayal, scandal, all smelling something rotten. Out here at the remote K frontier, news always arrived fashionably late. Or maybe it was just me living under a rock, or more accurately, under a hill of laundry and milk bottles instead of tracking headlines. By the time I caught wind of it, the Kong marriage had already been teetering for a long while. But what was he doing in a remote place like this? Of course, I wouldn't see him. I avoided him like a plague. To me, he was irrelevant. But my staff noticed. They always do. Dr. Han, usually calm, precise, borderline obsessive about follow-ups, had suddenly become strategically absent. I delegated every task concerning Kong Jiwoo to everyone, except me using Tai Chi technique. I'd ask for his updates from the far end of the corridor, requested his vitals while pretending to wash my hands. Physically, he was stable, faster recovery than most, courtesy of his military conditioning. But his left leg was a different story. The muscle had been torn through and healing was slow. The orthopedist said, to walk fluidly again, the muscles just need to be retrained, to obey again. But it wasn't that body that needed convincing. Jiwoo hated the crutches like mortal enemies from a past life. The hospital's resident psychologist, who nodded sagely, explained this was the counter-symptom of someone who had been sitting on the top too long, where his whole sense of self is built on strength, command, and control. Needing crutches means to depend on something else, and that, my friend, is an existential crisis in uniform. Jiwoo refused assistance, ignored pain, forced his body to perform military miracles. He called it discipline. We called it self-destruction. Within a week, he tore through 2 layers of sutures and landed himself back in the OR. That was when I finally had no choice. As VP, as a doctor, I showed my face. Chapter 4. I stood outside the sliding door, my heart racing. Load of crap, I told myself. Pretend stranger. He's nothing to me. Stay professional. But before I could finish psyching myself up, a male nurse beat me to it and went in. Good afternoon, General. How are you feeling? The male nurse chirpy as a bird. Jiwoo looked up. Bad news. Grand annoyance flared up. In one fluid motion, he grabbed a stack of paper cups and flung it at the nurse, short of him shouting "fuck off." The nurse ducked. I caught the cup in one hand. And then we locked eyes. His usually narrow eyes instantly forced wide, pitiful. His eyes burned with recognition. Fast. Too fast. I patted the nurse's back and signaled him to leave the patient to me. Before the door clicked shut behind me, Yirim? Jiwoo said my name. Han Yirim. He added my surname. I brushed aside the recognition that threatened to rattle me. General Kong, you are not on the battlefield. This is my hospital. You either follow our procedures, remain cooperative, or you leave for another facility. I will not tolerate anyone, no matter the rank, undermining our standards or reputation. Yirim, he repeated, like he didn't hear a word I said. Right this moment, fate, of course, decided to rearrange my life, without asking for my opinion. Because my twins were back from preschool, and now doing their usual play rounds. Unhindered, giggling and checking on every patient they saw, delivering doses of joy to patients. The automatic door slid open. Yuna peeked in first. Then she set her toy AK-47 down, performed an awkward somersault that ended in a soft thunk. She sprang upright, brushing imaginary dust off her tiny white coat, then sprinted to Jiwoo. "Sir, you safe," she declared. Behind his sister, Yuri trailed in with his blue medic case, stethoscope at the ready. "Ajasi, you're new here. I'm a medic. I'll check if you're okay." Yuri's baby voice rang out. A face trained for ambushes, braced for artillery, ready for hailstorm of bullets. Jiwoo was totally unprepared for blue plastic stethoscope, blue medic case, and a green plastic AK-47. Ah, I sighed inwardly. The AK-47. I made a mental note to reclaim that rifle later. It seemed no one had taken me seriously when I said don't give my children weapons. "Ajasi Saya, I'll fix you if you're hurt," my youngest said, pressing the stethoscope to Jiwa's wrist. My world stopped as the scene unfolded. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. What Jiwa's face would look like if he saw his own DNA in person. His hard, stoic expression softened. Not faintly, not hesitantly, but in total disbelief, yet wholly real. For one fragile heartbeat, Jiwa looked like a father himself. Yuna finally spotted me. "Dada!" she squealed, sprinting into my arms. Yuri followed, hopping beside his sister. Within seconds, I was a white-coated doctor with a twin on each side of my hip. Whatever was spiraling behind Jiwa's eyes, I knew it had everything to do with the children and me. But whatever, they had no connection with me now. I delivered my doctor's warning once more, completed my professional oath, and stepped out of the ward. Chapter 5. The next few days passed without incident. No ruckus from the 2-star terror in the VIP ward. Peace at last. A sign he'd finally obeyed my orders and settled down like a proper patient. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Overheard whispers told a different story. The general had befriended his crutches and could be seen behind everywhere my 2 little medics roamed. Curious, I decided to follow him. I rounded a corner and froze. My heart fluttered like trapped butterflies. Outside a closed ward, Jiwa stood leaning against the wall, shoulders relaxed, eyes soft, looking into a room. Inside, the twins were gleefully checking vitals on an inpatient, completely unaware of the shadow outside. My fear surged. Did he found out something? Panic rising at the thought that the lie I'd carried for half a decade might be discovered by the one I'd betrayed. I melted back into the shadows and bolted to the safety of my office, desperate to grasp for control. At my desk, I gazed out the window, my thoughts scattered with a jumble of memories from the past. Time slipped by unnoticed until the office door creaked open without warning. The twins burst in, bright and unstoppable. Right behind them, the general on crutches followed in. My heart froze. Kong Jiwoo, here in my office. All messy thoughts whooshed out of my brain in an instant. "Dada! Mission complete. We found Appa," the twins shouted gleefully. If my heart had frozen before, it now stopped entirely. Instinct took over. I rose from my chair and knelt down to meet their level. "That's not Appa, sweethearts," I said, voice trembling. "You cannot simply call anyone Appa." Yuna, always the faster and daring one, tilted her head and said, "But a Jassy looks like Appa." Then, like a little traitor, she shot past me and made a beeline for the corner of my desk. I gasped, knew what she was up to. I lunged, but too late. She had pulled out a small photo print and pointed at it. "See, my Appa." I swallowed hard, snatched the photo from her hand, and faced it back down on the desk. "There is no Appa, sweetheart. There is no one. Just me." With that said, her little face crumpled. It showed me every word I had whispered since they were little, now threatened to call me a liar in their innocent eyes. Jiwa's gaze lingered, unwavering. It wasn't curiosity. It was something deeper, something twisting with accusation, and something I dared not name. He moved forward, crutches clicking softly against the floor. "They're yours, aren't they?" His voice low, commanding. I instinctively tightened my arms around them. I'm sorry if my kids bothered you, General." "Hannah," I called out to the intern, "that I paid extra to keep my chaos contained while I worked. Please come take the kids for their snacks." The office fell silent again once Hannah and the twins were gone. Jiwoo picked up the photo. He paused looking at it a moment. Then he moved closer. I should have stepped back, but my feet stayed, probably rooted by my guilty conscience. His brow arched, amusement flickering in his eyes. "They called me Appa." I felt my stomach drop. "They don't know what they're saying. Kids say dumb things sometimes," I muttered, avoiding his gaze. Jiwoo bent low to shove his face into my line of sight. "Care to explain why they look more like me than anything of you?" His gaze swept across my desk, then roamed my office, searching like a predator for a clue. "I see no photo of your wife? Not even a partner? Only me." I took a deep breath, put on a mask of professionalism, and unleashed a torrent of words. "General, you are post-op. Should not be moving around unsupervised. Wounds still fresh, muscles not ready. Walking risks tearing sutures, reopening the injury, and delaying recovery." Without waiting for a reply, I stepped out to call in assistance and returned with a wheelchair. In a slight raised voice, I said, "I will not allow you to compromise your healing." Immediately, several efficient male nurses came and assisted the big and resisting general into the wheelchair chair and forcefully wheeled him out of my office. Once the door clicked shut behind him, my legs buckled and I melted into the chair. Chapter 6. Later that evening, I took the twins for ice cream, hoping to wash their memories of the afternoon clean. The weekend crowd of the mall buzzed around us. The fluorescent lights were harsh, the chatter overwhelming, but my babies kept me grounded. Placing them on the ordering counter, I said, "Only 1 scoop, okay?" They pouted. In unison, always. 2 scoops. 1, 2, 1. 8 scoops. A low, firm voice cut in from behind, made the decision short. I froze. And just like that, the next instant, the twins were sandwiched between 2 grown men in a secluded corner. Jiwa's assistant magically placed a tray of 4 cups of rainbow ice cream in front of us, and then made himself vanished. While the kids swung their legs walloping their heavens, we stared at each other, serious as hell. The air gotten too awkward. I gave in with a sigh. "You're not allowed to walk out without a doctor's approval," I said, trying to sound professional. "They're mine," Jiwa whispered. I said nothing, and in that silence, it carried the answer he waited for. The silence stretched, his eyes shifting between the twins and me, battling some invisible turmoil. Then his gaze pierced mine. "How? We're both men." I had braced myself for this moment. Time to take the giant out of the bag I'd carried for 5 long years. "IVF and surrogacy," I admitted. "When?" "Our last night together." He nodded slowly, as if a new realization struck him. "I never imagined you'd go this far for our love," he whispered. "Jiwa, I didn't mean for you to see them. I never intended for you to find out at all. Why did you hold on?" His question cut through me like a blade, slicing open the parts of me I'd tried to bury. "Because you were my everything?" His eyes darkened. My blunt confession sent him spiraling inside in ways I could feel. To protect my children and to nudge him out of their orbit sooner, I added, "Thank you for the ice cream, General, but we don't need you." Jiwa's eyes narrowed, dangerous. "You think you get to decide?" he murmured, leaning close. "Yes," I hissed, though my knees betrayed me. "I'm their parent, their only parent, and I don't need anyone interfering." He studied me with a sharp gaze. Then, to my disbelief, his lips curved into a mischievous smile. He picked up a scoop of ice cream and lifted it to my mouth. "Then prove it." I blinked at his audacity. The twins looked up, intrigued. "Eat the ice cream, Dada. Don't be rude to Appa," Yuna said. And I did, and then promptly kicked myself in the shin. Then came another bomb. Yuri finished his cup. He leaned toward Jiwoo. "Wipe," he demanded. I froze. Jiwoo, the general whose aura made soldiers scatter, pulled a napkin and gently wiped his mini-me's sticky mouth. His large hand dwarfed Yuri's tiny face, but the motion was careful, tender. And Yuri beamed. "Thank you, Appa." Jiwoo beamed double. I buried my red face in one hand. This was a nightmare. Utterly absurd. When I finally looked up, Jiwa's eyes met mine with a challenging gaze that said, "Deny me if you can." He rose, straightened to full height, towering over me. "Proven to me your twins already agreed with me," he whispered. Chapter 7. The days that followed were utter chaos. Jiwa somehow discharged himself from the hospital and showed up at my apartment the very next weekend. Uninvited, of course, proclaiming with all the seriousness of a father has rights. "What father?" I spat at his face. But my traitorous twins erupted with joy, dragging him straight into their game of medic center, crowning him their new Private Ryan. As part of their medical research, they forced him to taste my overrated egg gimbap and laughed without mercy at my disastrous homemade kimchi. Who knew a doctor could make gimbap like this? Jiwa said between mouthfuls, eyes glinting with mischief. The twins clambered all over him like he was their personal jungle gym, giggling as they bossed the towering man around. I watched them. I watched him. And with terrifying realization, it struck me. The more time he spent with them, the more time he spent with me. The more I'd be pulled back into the mire of us again, which was an impossibility. I was certain. It didn't end with a single night. It was every day, every glance, every unsaid word. Every little instant that could break me if he ever walked away again. Each night, when the kids were asleep, I would walk him to the door and say, "Don't come back." And he would pause, look down at me with that unbearably familiar gaze, and say, "You don't believe that?" "Yes, I do," I always insisted. Then his eyes would flicker down to my lips. The air would thicken, like gravity itself conspired against us. Smoldering heat between us recharged, made my knees weak. My instincts screamed to lean closer. I hated it. I hated how much I wanted it. It seemed his injury earned him a medical leave of epic proportions, apparently the kind that never ends. And with so much idle time in hand, he invaded our routines, our space. And slowly, me. What used to be a dining table somehow got drafted into service, a makeshift mini-war room, where folders labeled capital letters confidential were defended by plastic dinosaurs and toy cars. Stern-looking men in uniform came by, their presence making other residents nervous. One evening, after putting away the storybooks and closed the twins' bedroom door behind me, I finally snapped. "You can't just show up like this." "I can," he replied easily, leaning against the kitchen table, his sheer size overwhelming the small space. I glared at him. "You're not part of their life. Not part of my life. So stop interfering." He was unwavering. "They think I am." My chest tightened. They don't understand what they're saying. They're only 4. Jiwa's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. Children don't lie about who they feel safe with. He extended a hand, gently pulling me toward him. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Because they reached out for something you can't give them. They chose me." "That's not a reason," I shot back. "It's enough for me." I clenched my fists, furious at how easily he twisted my words. "You need to stop. You need to leave us alone." "You don't believe that," he muttered. My throat tightened. I wanted to deny it, but the words refused to come. Because he was right. Deep down, I didn't want him gone, and he knew it too. Why bother coming back? I whispered. "Why now?" "Because I want to." I shivered. 6 years ago, I would have braced against the sky if that's what it took to keep him. And then he kissed me. It was deep and desperate, like drowning and breathing at once, like reclaiming something we'd both lost and feared to touch again. Before his hands could cross the line, before I let my traitorous body give in, I pulled away, forcing distance. Don't play with me. Don't pretend." My voice breaking. If the scar of my heartbreak had a shape, I wanted him to see the stitches. "You abandoned me the first time when things got hard. You chose your reputation over me. Decided that your family's pride was worth more than our love. How could I ever trust you now?" He froze. His face hardened, caught between guilt and something nakedly raw. Like a man suddenly confronted with the ruins of the damage he'd caused, too late to undo it. Then the warmth faded from his eyes. His voice came low, almost a plea. "Tell me you want me gone," he said. "Tell me, and I'll leave." I stared at him, unable to speak. He should fight back or explain. Instead, he simply handed me the choice like a burden, and that was the cruelest thing of all. Thinking that, anger rose hot and choking. "You should leave," I snapped. Silence. Only the sound of rain pelting the window. After what felt like forever, he finally broke the silence and said, "Do you have an umbrella?" I blinked, dumbfounded. "No." Something in my answer sealed his decision for him for the night. He moved, one swift motion closing the gap between us. His hand caught the back of my neck, and his lips crashed against mine. It wasn't careful. It wasn't tentative. It was fire, raw, consuming, desperate. I gasped into his mouth, tasting danger, tasting hunger of the man I swore I didn't want. And yet I melted. When he finally pulled back, our breaths came ragged. His forehead rested against mine. "Don't shut me out," he whispered. My chest heaved, tears burning at the edges of my eyes. "I'm scared." "I know," he murmured. His thumb brushed my cheek. "So am I. But I'd rather face that fear with you than live without you." And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, fate had given me a second chance. The next morning, I woke tangled in his arms, his heartbeat steady against my back, his breath warm against my neck. I should have pushed him away. I should have said last night was a total mistake. But when two little tornadoes stormed out of their bedroom, rubbing their eyes and stumbling into ours, everything changed. Their faces lit up like the sun. "Appa! Appa, you slept over?" they squealed, climbing onto the bed. Jiwoo laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. He lifted them easily, one in each arm. "Yes, he did," I answered instead, as I ruffled the twins' hair. "Is that okay, baby?" "The best," they yelled in perfect unison. They always did. They nestled between us, laughter spilling over the sheets. For the first time in a long while, it smelled like home. Chapter 8. "Dr. Han, come quick." A fight broke out in Ward 213. A pale-faced nurse burst through my office door. By the time I reached, a full-blown chaos had taken over the ward. In the middle of it all, of course, Kang Jiwoo. On the ground, being wrestled, another man of similar build. It took me a heartbeat to recognize him. It was the deputy commander of Frontier Base K, Park Damien. Perfect. Two bulls from the same pen, apparently trying to finish the war right here in my hospital. For male nurses and a couple of security guards rushed in to pry them apart. Thinking back, on the very night they were airdropped, both men had sustained identical injuries. Matching set of stabs and slash wounds. Except that Jiwoo took a stab on his thigh, while Damien took a stab to his side, that had harrowingly missed his vital organs by an inch. And now, as fate's favorite joke, both decided to rip them open again, like two chapters that refused to end. I swear, if sarcasm could be used as anesthesia, half the ward would have been out cold. When sedation finally hit, the scene resembled two tranquilized gorillas being wheeled into the OR. Matching drips, matching tempers, matching idiocy. By the next morning, the hospital had gone quiet again, or so I thought. Not much later, a nurse approached my desk like a mouse sniffing out cheese. "Dr. Han, General Kang's wife and daughter have arrived." Her words landed like a blow straight to the gut. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Still, professionalism, or what was left of it, made me walk to Jiwoo's ward. Then I saw her. Meili. Beautiful, composed. Still every inch the woman I saw on the news. And nestled in Jiwoo's embrace was a little girl, Sujin, maybe 5 years old. The picture framed itself in my mind, a complete family, whole and perfect. A portrait of what I was never meant to touch. His wife's presence only mean one thing. Kang Jiwoo was to go back to where he belonged. I felt my heart being squeezed. Every warmth we'd shared that night dissolved into shards of cold clarity. Caught yet in another storm. The truth I'd been too afraid to face. Inside me, the despair smelled familiar. Mr. Lucifer had peeked its head and whispered, "Hello again, old friend." But no, I couldn't fall apart. Not anymore. I wasn't 20-something and naive. I was now a father of 2. So I made the cleanest cut I could think of. To take a week's leave. No goodbyes. No visits. No explanations. I was sure by the time I returned to work, Kang Jiwoo would long be discharged, gone from the hospital, from my life. Just like the last time I let him go. That was the best for the twins too. Children forget fast, if you keep them away from the fire fast enough. So that was the plan. Chapter 9. It had been a while since I last took real time off work. So I did what any guilt-ridden parent would do. Packed a week so full of fun. Jungle gyms, aquariums, amusement parks. And did I fared. By day 3, I aged 10 years. By day 6, my soul ditched me. Which reminded me I really couldn't keep skimping on a full-time nanny. We went hotel hopping, mostly because I was afraid Jiwoo might wait at my apartment. And Jiwoo refused to be denied the forbidden fruit. Because he found us. Found me lying under an old tree in Hanol Park, hollowed out from exhaustion, the twins snoring on each side of my chest. "You've any idea how hard I've combed this city for your tracks?" he hissed. After tucking the twins into a dark-tinted MPV, he dragged me away into the sea of tall, mully grass. It was autumn. The whole park was a vast blush of pink, like a fever dream. Beautiful, but not for me. "Jiwoo, stop," I said, shaking his hand off. "Stop doing this to me." I heard inside. "I'm divorcing Meili. I want you, us, be together." Turned out, Meili and Commander Damien were a thing. A tragic love, really. Childhood sweethearts ripped apart for her parents couldn't stomach an orphan son-in-law. But love forged through years apart doesn't just die. It burrows into the marrow, stubborn, quiet, waiting. Their bond had survived secrecy, duty, and deceit. And little Sujin's DNA test wrote their final chapter. To me, that was actually a beautiful story. Enviable, even. But for Jiwoo, it was everything opposite. 5 years of being the unwitting fool in someone else's love story. So the brawl at the hospital was no accident. It was a reckoning. For every year Jiwoo had worn a green hat without knowing it. I used to think the hardest part of my life was raising 2 kids alone. Now I realized the hardest part was learning to let myself be loved again. Because love wasn't something I trusted anymore. Love had teeth, claws, that cut deep the closer you let it in. Yirim, I don't play. You know I'm not that type, he said. His voice sounded desperate. And I answered, what happens when you wake up one day and realize you don't want to be with a man anymore? When your biology drags you back to the conventional. I can't do that again. Took me 6 months holding my therapist's hand to stand again. The silence that day stretched into days. Then Jiwoo disappeared. My life resumed, or so I told myself. One evening. Dada. Yuri's small voice yanked me out of my trance at the dinner table. Why are you staring at the soup? Are you thinking Appa again? The breath I sucked in nearly choked me. Baby, what makes you say that? Because. Dada's face tomato. Dada always tomato when Appa comes. Yuna chimed in. When Appa visit again? He buys me ice cream. Can he be my Appa? Yuri asked. Face innocent and pure. My heart broke all over again. How could I explain to them that love wasn't that simple? That my heart was too scarred, too chicken to open again? So I kissed their foreheads and whispered, I don't know yet, sweethearts. I don't know. Chapter 10. 1 month later. A Sunday. I woke to the sound of shrill giggles tumbling through the living room, followed by a man's deep voice. Gotcha. I'm gonna eat you for breakfast. Yum yum. My eyes snapped open. A man. In my house. I bolted out of the bedroom. Standing in my living room was Kong Jiwoo. Like he belonged there. Sleeves rolled, shirt clinging to those infuriatingly broad shoulders, carrying Yuna under one arm and Yuri under the other like squealing piglets. How did you get in? I said. Then I remembered. Right. Must be the live-in nanny. I changed tack. What the hell are you doing here? Jiwoo met my glare with maddening calm. He was about to answer, but the twins' squeals. Appa, Appa, fly, fly. I stiffened, wanted to correct them, to say he's not Appa. But when I saw him spinning them in circles, loads of laughter rumbling the room, the protest died in my mouth. Right there, the general looked like he'd always belonged, like the twins really were his. Well, technically yes, but well, only if I approved, of course. The day blurred into something surreal. He helped Mrs. Kim prepare lunch and dinner, adding his mother's marinated eggs to the table, scolded the twins when they spilled juice, building Lego castles that resembled nothing as advertised on the box. And me? I stood there like an outsider in my own home, torn between fury and something dangerously close to peace. At one point, Yuri climbed onto his lap, asking, Appa, are you going to stay? Jiwoo's voice doting. As long as your dada lets me. I nearly choked on my Woolung tea. 3 pairs of expectant eyes turned to me, pouting in perfect unison. I thought my heart might combust on the spot. That night, Jiwoo stayed. Even when I tried to push him out the door, he stood rooted by the balcony, city lights blinking behind him. Let me stay, Yirim. It wasn't a request. It was a promise. My divorce is finalized. I've moved out. And moved in here. If you'll have me. If not, I'll have nowhere else to go. I looked at him, conflicted. You'll regret it one day, I muttered. He smiled faintly. Maybe. But I'd rather not regret fighting for you than live safe without you. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. Then let me show you, he said, pulling me close. Months passed. We were never official, at least not publicly. Jiwoo wanted a small closed-door ceremony. I said it'd be a suicide. I told him that as long as I was named his dependent on all his insurance policy and wills, then fine. The kid's surname was changed from Han to Kong. In reality, we did marry. Quietly. Truthfully. In a secluded resort on Jeju Island, under soft pink dusk, Jiwoo slid a ring onto my finger and whispered, "You're mine, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." A year later, a pink, wailing bundle with a similar pissed-off face was passed from one pair of wrinkled hands to another, delicate as a Chosun dynasty porcelain. Both the Kong and the Han elders beamed as they welcomed the newest member of the family, our daughter, Han Hanol. Yeah, I did that again. This time with consent, because Hanol was my DNA. Hi there. Thanks for listening in. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you have done differently in their shoes, or what situation of chaos would you like us to draw up next, as your point of reference for psychology insights?